Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Monday session, Entrepreneurs and Developers. Hope everyone had a wonderful weekend, and we're going to jump right into it. Get started. Again, my name is Tiffany Williams, and I'm the principal broker of Eternal LLC, also the president of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, the Louisville chapter. And if you ever do want any information about NARAB, we do have a website, and you can go to narab.com, and it just kind of tells you the background and the history of NARAB. Glad to see everyone here. It is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. We've got a lot of information today to go over. So we're just going to jump right in. And hopefully you guys, whatever questions that you have, let us know. We can put them in the chat. You can raise your hand and we'll make sure that we get to every one of them. Let's see. We was hoping to have a speaker today, but I think it's just going to be us today, but we definitely will have a speaker on Wednesday, which will be U.S. Bank. Mr. Matthew Harris will be with us, and he's going to talk about construction and construction loans and what U.S. Bank has to offer. Okay. All right. Well, let's get started, and we're going to go into our workbook, establishing your acquisition criteria. That sounds like something hard to do, but it's actually not. It's just basically talking about, hey, what are you looking for in the property that you want? You know, do you want a brick building? Do you want it in a certain area? Do you want it pretty much almost done, or do you want to start it from the ground up? And if we go into our workbook, we're going to start just from the beginning and searching for our property and a couple of steps before we actually buy. And as in the workbook, which it says we're in the section buy your first project, which property will be your first. That's establishing that criteria. One of the things it does say is set up a separate email of all the properties. So when you start getting those properties in from all these different websites and things that you're going to sign up for, it is a good idea to have a separate email. And the reason is that way it doesn't get clogged up. You don't miss anything. You have one set location. It just keeps you organized and it keeps it separate from all your other information, things like that. So I do definitely recommend you setting up a separate email. Just keep everything organized, keep it separate, and that way you don't miss maybe a hot piece of property that you've been looking for and it finally came through. And guess what? Because you couldn't find the email and the information, you miss out on it. So it's just a really good tip. I definitely recommend that. Me, myself, I think I have 2 email accounts. So one for business and one for personal. It just keeps everything nice and tight. And even in my business, I have even subcategories to have my emails shift into different folders according to titles and things like that I want to keep track of. So that way it kind of keeps you going through your information very quickly, and you can get to what you need to very fast. So anybody that has email, you guys know we get a lot of junk mail, and sometimes it's just cumbersome to try to go through and keep all that stuff clean. This way, if you set up your email, you have a separate email, and you have folders up under it, you can go through it pretty quickly and get what you need. Okay. The other thing that they recommend is doing a website. You can get websites that don't cost too much. I know if you go to GoDaddy, GoDaddy has a package that you can get. You can, buy your domain, you can do your website, things of that nature. But before you do invest in that, I would say sit down and really think about if you need a website just yet. What are you going to use that website for? What kind of information are you trying to get from that website, and how are you going to get that information out of the website? Because right now you're looking for properties to purchase or your first project or future projects. So you can have a website. It's not too early to start thinking about it. Start thinking about your branding, your name and things like that, because those are the things that, hey, before we even get to the website section, you should already have. But you are the only one that can say if you're ready for a website or not. And like I said, when you start building a website, you do have to think about, what kind of information are you going to put on there? And if it is one of those websites that's set up to gather information. How are you going to get that information out? What kind of reports do you want? What kind of reports can you get out of it? How do you get those reports? Are you going to have somebody keeping this information updated on a regular basis, or are you going to be responsible for keeping information updated? Websites are work, and you do want to if you do have a website, you want it to be professional. So you want to keep that information current and updated as much as possible. So that is a responsibility. And it is money. So I would just say, think about that before you go gung-ho and go out and get a website. But again, if you do, there's a section right here. It says setting up your website. Figure out your niche, your target area, your acquisition criteria, what kind of properties are you looking for, and what in that property that you want. You can, of course, showcase your expertise. You can tell a little bit about yourself, a little bit about the company, things of that nature. And the main thing is you definitely want to put your contact information out there. So if you do want to set up a website, those are just a quick few little hints to make sure that you include that information on your website. Okay. And I would say definitely search other people's websites, see what you like and what you don't like. And how it flows, and click on different information and things like that. So you can know, yes, I like this feature. No, I don't want that feature. So why reinvent the wheel if you don't have to? Okay. Searching for properties using real estate agents. Whoa, that's me. That's me. So again, not a bad idea at all to use all your resources. Don't get stuck on just one thing, one way of doing it, one resource. Use all your resources. One of the resources is a real estate agent. And basically what we do is we sit down and we have that initial conversation with you. And we talk to you about, okay, what are you looking for? What kind of building or home are you looking for? Is it a certain area that you're looking at? Also, what is your budget? I definitely want to look at what is your budget. We will talk to you about, hey, okay, if you are flipping or you are doing rentals, things like that, we're going to talk in depth about what that means and what you need to do with those properties, and some of the laws that govern each type of property and what you have to do. And the reason why I say that, because I have seen where you have flippers, wholesalers, things like that, where they are not real estate agents and probably maybe didn't get one, and they are doing wholesaling, which basically is getting the house and then finding an investor to buy that house or whatever, and then they get a cut in the middle. If you do not do that properly and you don't know the language, don't know the contracts and things like that, you can get yourself into a sticky situation. So it's best to actually have a real estate agent that you can confer with to make sure that you do know the laws and regulations and stuff like that. It's not that you can't learn them yourself. You can. Absolutely. The information is out there. But do you have the time to do that? And do you want to do that? It's still good as you go along to learn as you go. But if somebody is there and has a resource to help you and they can find it pretty quickly and tell you about what's going on with each kind of property, you might want to use that resource starting out. And as you grow and learn and things like that, you may need a realtor less and less. Just kind of up to you on how you want to do that and what your budget is. Yes, you do have to pay a realtor a commission, but again, look at your pros and cons. Is it worth it? Because a realtor, like I said, is going to sit down and have that initial conversation with you on what you're looking for. We're going to set you up with a search. So any listings that we find, whether they are in the system, we can send them to you automatically, where you get them on a daily basis as soon as something pops up. Or if we hear, from other realtors, other sources of a property that might be coming available, we can let you know that. We can help guide you to different groups, different things like that, to find that property that you're looking for. Not only will we do that, but we also will make sure that, once you do find that property and you're ready to buy, we're going to take care of all the paperwork. making sure that that contract that you're doing is in your best interest. So looking at all the details, making sure that everything that we talked about is in writing, and that everything that you want and looking for doesn't meet the criteria of, is it in my budget? Is it in the area? And if not, we're going to talk about, okay, well, this might not be in the area, but look at these comps. So if you do fix it, if you're looking at a flip and you're fixing it up, these are the comps, because we can provide comps for you too, to say, hey, this is what, if you fix it up, this is pretty much kind of what that house is going for, that property is going for. So that gives you an idea of how much do you want to invest? Is it going to be too much to fix up? Is it just right? Or is it not even worth it? So we also do comps, things like that. We're going to do the paperwork for your deal. And then once we do that, we're going to make sure that we see that deal all the way through to the end. So you get to the closing and get those keys. So everything that's in that contract, we're going to make sure that it is executed and is done properly. So it is good to have a realtor in your corner. And then also when you finish your project, if it's one that you're going to sell, we also handle that. Maybe you don't want to sell it yourself, because that involves putting it out there as far as marketing, putting it out there and getting phone calls, scheduling appointments to have people come and look at it. And then once they do, doing the documentation as far as the contract, getting the contract together. If this one is sent in to you, what if you get multiple offers? You got all those contracts, and trust me, in a contract, it's going to say, I want a response back in such time. So if you've got time to do all those things, then yes, you might want to not use a realtor. But if you feel like there's value in your time and letting somebody else handle that, then that's where we come into play and help. So just really kind of depends on what are you looking to do, and if you want to do it yourself, like anything else, or is that something that you have somebody else do? When you start thinking about the time that it takes to buy or sell, and the information and the marketing and all those components, you might want to have somebody else do it, because you're busy looking for the next property or working on your project or getting that property, and seeing what's out there, what's your budget, putting your budget together, getting your team together, things of that nature. So if a real estate agent can help you, why not let them help? So it is a lot of services that we do offer that maybe you don't want to take on at that time. And again, we are, and I cannot stress this enough, we are going to help you understand the legal side of it. We are not lawyers, we're not attorneys, but we can lead you and say, well, you know what? This is Kentucky law. This is Kentucky regulations. These are the Louisville ordinances that you have to follow, things of that nature. And when I say ordinance, like in Jefferson County, for instance, anytime a seller sells a property, you have to make sure that there is at least a 10-year lithium battery in the smoke detector, or either it's hardwired in. That is your responsibility. So when you sell a property, you have to make sure that that is complete, that is done. So that's a Jefferson County ordinance. If we was in Bullitt County or Nelson County, that's not an ordinance for them. So again, just things that, you know, your realtor might know that maybe you don't know. And it just kind of keeps you straight and keeps you out of court. Also, if you are buying property and you are renting things out, you need to know the laws and regulations about that. What are tenants' rights? What are landlords' rights? Anything that's changing. We had a lot of changes going on during COVID when it pertained to, you know, people not getting paid, or their job went away, laid off, things of that nature. And they totally stopped the goodness, I'm sorry, guys, I lost my train of thought. Eviction. Thank you. Totally stopped the eviction process for a while. And then when it came back, there was still certain stipulations. And then there was a lot of community help for people that was helping them pay their rent. But the thing is that if your tenant came to you, gave you the paperwork, and the organization was going to pay the back rent and a couple of months going forward. Sounds great and wonderful, but you do have to sign the documentation saying that you will not evict that person, and that you will wait on the funds. Now, however long those funds take is how long it takes. So during that time, you cannot evict that person because you've agreed. So it's a lot of little things like that or whatever that we can assist and help with. Construction, definitely with construction, whether you are looking to build construction or take over construction or build out on an existing property. Again, zoning, environmental issues, and that's a couple of little things that's listed on here that we'll go through. So all those things that a realtor helps you with to make sure that you are in the best possible light and that you are not outside of those parameters. So it doesn't hurt you in the long run or the short term. Again, we're going to make sure that we take care of our clients. Any questions on any of that information as far as why not to use a realtor?
One question I have, simple question.
Sure.
What are the current rates or percentages that agents get now?
Sure. And let me tell you about how that commission actually works. So most of the time it is 6%, but that is not written in stone, depending on what you're going to have your agent do and what kind of property it is. That commission, and that is a conversation that you'll have with your agent, but that commission could be, I haven't really seen go lower than 6% unless there's a reason. But it could go a little higher than 6%, like I said, depending on what you have your agent doing. And then also it could be a flat fee. I've done flat fees before. Say if it's a house that really needs some work, and we're putting it on the market for $30,000 or something like that, might just do a flat fee and say, this is the amount that I'm going to charge to put that on the market for you. So again, that's a conversation with you and the agent, but roughly in most cases, usually about 6%. And what happens with that 6% is that the selling agent, which, or listing agent, we call it a listing agent, that agent is the one that you're going to use to list your house and sell your house, right? They will put that house on the market, and to any other agent that's out there, they'll say, hey, I will share so much of my commission with you if you bring me a buyer, right? So that's what happens with that 6%. We will share that with another agent that's bringing us a buyer. But yes, so to answer your question, roughly about 6%.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? And it's no secret. And the reason why I can't give you a definite yes, it is 6%, because there is nothing written in stone on commission. And it's just an individual conversation with your agent. Let's see. Let me see. We got some things in the chat. Okay. Somebody got that for me. All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Sorry, I'm just going to plug up my computer real quick. I apologize, guys. I thought I did that and didn't. I want to go out on it.
I have a question, Tiffany.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
You know how some realtors are investor friendly? There's some realtors that, you know, specialize in real estate development.
Yep.
Have like a list of those that specialize in it by any chance?
No, because
network.
right.
Okay.
Networking. Each realtor is different, and 1 minute I can be specializing in investment properties, the next I might be over in commercial because the field is just so wide open. But it is good to talk to the realtor and to see how much experience do they have in what you want to have done. So if you are looking at commercial and building from the ground up, you definitely want to be talking to a realtor that has done a couple of those. And that way they can help you in the best possible way and talk to you about what needs to be done and what you need to look for. But absolutely, say for instance, like me, I can definitely help with commercial leasing, and definitely anything residential and property management. Building from the ground up, probably not as helpful.
Right. Okay.
I will probably help you though, find a realtor that is.
Okay. More familiar with. Okay. Thank you.
Right. No problem. Any other questions on real estate or realtors? Let's see. Now, a couple of ways to find properties. Right? Oh man, there is, of course, our computer at our fingertips, Google. You can do, and there are some searches in the workbook, but they mentioned LoopNet, Redfin, Zillow, and I would say on some of these you do have to be careful because some of these websites are not updated. Like if you ever went into Zillow, sometimes Zillow is not updated. But again, if you're working with a real estate agent, they can actually go in the system if it is listed with another realtor and tell you if what's going on with that property. But if you're looking at like especially houses and things like that, a great updated website is realtor.com. It's more updated than Zillow. But Zillow will have properties that are for sale by owners. Now, it's not all-inclusive because it depends on if that owner is even putting that house out there on the market and advertising with Zillow, but Zillow does have for sale by owners, as to realtor.com doesn't. So it's still a good resource. You just got to be careful about the information that's out there. Also, of course, you're going to utilize, what we looked at the last couple of weeks, all those resources, which is networking through some of the investor groups. Definitely want to look at the Jefferson County Commissioners. Another resource is the HUD store. HUD Home Store, HUDHomestore.com. And those are the houses that, for whatever reason, FHA, which is HUD, has ended up with those homes back. Most of the time it's because they was foreclosed on. Now they have the house. And HUD is going to put that house back out there for sale. So the HUDHomestore.com, HUDHomestore.com. You can go out there and look for houses. Mm-hmm.
Question, going back to a previous conversation. For homes that were listed on the MLS and they did not sell, is there a certain website that you can go to that will show the ones that did not sell and that has the listing closed out and they never did sell? Or is that something strictly you guys have access to?
It may be on realtor.com because our MLS does upload to realtor.com. But if it doesn't, it would just be getting with a real estate agent to send you those listings. Because we can go in the system and look at the ones that have, expired. We call those expired. We can look to see what has came back on the market. Also, some houses or properties will go temporary off the market, which means that they're 2 to 1 going to come back on, but they had to take it off the market for one reason or another. We can look at all those items for you. And again, these are properties that are listed with an agent. So items that are not listed with the agent because somebody didn't want to use the agent, we don't have that kind of extensive information on those houses. Those are the ones, like with HUD Homes, down at the Jefferson County Courthouse, anything that you find on the other websites, or somebody personally, like on Facebook, is saying, hey, we got a house for sale. Those are the ones that if it does not have an agent, we probably don't have it in our system. Again, getting with the banks to see if you can get on the REO list and have them send you a list of their houses. That is from institute to institute. So there's no one website that will fit that. You do have to contact them individually, but it is a way of getting riding through neighborhoods. You see abandoned properties and things like that. You would have to do a little digging, a little research through the PVA to find out who owns it. And then from there, you can, like I said, send them a letter or try to get in touch with the person if they've got an address. I probably wouldn't nowadays go and knock on people's doors, but if you've got an address and you feel comfortable with doing that, you can. Most people will send a letter. Most people will try to find a telephone number to contact the owner of that house. But if you're in a neighborhood and you see that it looks like nobody's lived there for a while, it's been abandoned, things like that, and you're interested in the property, PVA is definitely a way of looking up the information on who owns it. Okay. I know people don't like to think about it or maybe try to use it, but houses that that went through probate, you can get information about probate estates as well. So those are houses that, and guys, I'm gonna say this, it is very important to talk to your family, especially if you have properties, and make sure that they do have a will or some kind of living trust. Because that house, if there is no will or living trust, that house, I don't care if you are the daughter, mama said I could have the house. It does not matter when it comes to legal documentation. That house will go through probate if you don't have legal documentation on that house. And when it goes through probate, it does take a while. It could take a year, it could take 2 years, it could take 3 years. And if there is no kin or anything like that, then those houses go to the government. So you can get information on those as well. But that's just my little tip of the day, is try to make sure you do. It can be an uncomfortable situation, conversation, but make sure you have those conversations with your family and make sure that you're prepared too. If you do have properties, that, you know, the loved ones know where the information is at and what your wishes are for that house and your property. Trust me, it does make a difference when somebody does pass away. And then also, you know, how some of us fight over the property and things like that. That just keeps everything clean and clear, and they know what your wishes are, or you know what your family members' wishes are. So there's plenty of companies that will help you with that. And even that is something that you need to think about, even with your business. So as you're growing this business and you're doing developments and you're doing houses and things like that, make sure that that is a part of your plan. Make sure it's part of your business plan, that you have written out exactly what you want to have happen to your company, and what should happen. Talk to your, your tax preparer as well. You can talk to your attorney, and they can tell you what steps and who to talk to or whatever, as far as getting that documentation together and making sure that what you want to have happen is in writing. So it does add a layer when you do have a business, when you do have properties and things like that. But it is very helpful, and it keeps a lot of confusion down, and it's a peace of mind that your family knows what you want to have happen. In the case that something does happen to you and pass away, you know exactly what you have set out for your business. I know a lot of people don't like to think about that, but it is a part of business and it's a part of life. Please make sure that you work on that too with your business plan. Auction.com. You can look at auction.com anytime. That is a good source. You can, and they've got even more auction websites, but you may come across a property at auction as well. They do a lot of online auctions, and they have some that's in person. That is a definitely different experience. It's not like the auction down with Jefferson County at the commissioner's sale, but you do usually have to register for that auction. They'll give you time, and they say, hey, this house is not going up for auction until June. And they'll give you the information. They'll tell you how to register, when the auction is going to be, whether it's in person or online, and then what you have to do to participate in that auction. I will say that I have done a few of those auctions, and sometimes they do set a minimum amount, which means that they have set an amount that has to be hit first before they even look at the bids, right? So they won't go up under an amount. So if it's a house that's on the market on an auction, and they say the minimum bid is $2,000, they are not going to sell that house for under $2,000. So all the bids have to be $2,000 and up. And they do auctions different ways. So I would say if you do go on them, read them very carefully, because there is some language on those auctions telling about minimum bid, telling when the bid is open, when it's going to start open and shut, what your fees are going to be if you do win the bid, when the money is due, and how to pay for it, and how you take title and things like that. So be very mindful when you do auctions to read everything and make sure that you understand it before you put your bid in. But it is a great resource to possibly get a property that is out there, and you might get it at a good deal. Okay, so again, just different resources that are out there to look for your property. And you can look at all these things every day. I would say if you're really looking for a property hot and heavy, you probably will need to look at it every single day to see what's out there, anything new, anything coming on the market. If you're looking to build from the ground up, you want to be looking at lots. You want to drive around. You want to see what's happening. I can tell you, just driving in today in my neighborhood, along on Lower Hunters, it was a piece of property that was, oh goodness, a nursery. It was a nursery right there by the elementary school. And now I just was riding through, and I remember last year that they had put out a notice. They wanted, this company wanted to come in and develop the land. I think they're looking to put apartment buildings out there. So they had to let, the neighborhood know, and not hearings, but meetings and things like that for the community. And so riding through today, now there's a notice out there said notice of zone changing. So they're about to change that whole zone so they can do this development. So again, a development is about to go. It's a piece of land that was up for sale, and it's a nice size piece of land too. So it was up for sale. Now they're looking at building right there. And also another piece of property. This property is actually on the market, and it's been on the market for a while. And it's right there on Cane Run Road. There's a house that's on the property, but along with that house, there's 2 other lots. And from what I understand, I'm just throwing this out there for you guys as freebie. The 2 lots are already zoned for building. I think you can still build residential on them. So for the price, you get the house and that lot, and then 2 other lots for the price out there. So
the house fenced in.
Huh?
Is that the house that's fenced in?
No, it's not fenced in. It's right on Cane Run Road. It's a
on the right side
stone house. If you come in from the west end going down Cane Run, yes, it's on the right hand side. So it's 2 lots right there. Nice piece of property. If you think about it, you look at the numbers, you get in a house and 2 other lots. It's already zoned. What could you do with it?
Didn't they already build something else right there by it also?
There's nothing by it except houses.
Okay.
Nothing by it but houses. And like I said, it's been on the market for a while. been in the house. It's just a typical fixer-upper like any other house. So could be something that somebody's interested in. What could you do with it? You know what I'm saying? Do you fix up that house and put 2 more houses on other lots? Do you put an apartment building on it? What's it zoned for? What could you do with it? Do you tear down that house and then put a fresh new house on it? A lot of possibilities. But things like that, just riding through, you see stuff and you'll start to notice more and more things that are out there on the market. And you just have to do a little research. You can ask the realtor. You can go and see if you can look on a PVA, look it up, see who owns it. But main point is you will have to do your research. If you want to make this your business, you will have to do some research. You're going to have to look and see what's going on in the neighborhoods, in the areas that you want. What kind of house or construction do you want? What do you want to do? And then start looking for those type of properties. And start networking, asking questions, finding out where you can get information, things of that nature. We'll put another one in there, auctionzip.com, and it is for all types of auctions. Thank you, Will.
If you have a question on the HUD homes, are all those first-time home buyers before the investors can bid on them? Is it like a 30-day period?
Most of them are not so much as first-time home buyers, but they will do for home buyers.
Occupied, right?
Yeah, owner occupied. And so get used to that term too if you're dealing with houses. Is especially with HUD, because HUD's whole purpose is to get people in homes. They're not so much interested in the investment side, but they do understand that if that house does not sell the way it is for an owner occupant, then that's when you do see the stipulation that like, hey, the first 10, 15 days, an investor cannot bid on it. It is for owner occupant or it's for a nonprofit organization. And they will let nonprofits bid on during that window. But then after that window, if it has not sold, then yes, it's free game. Absolutely. So again, HUD is trying to make sure that they get owner occupants first and give them the opportunity. And then after that, yes, anybody can bid on them. Mm-hmm.
Would
Good
it be
question.
like a nonprofit for New Directions or a nonprofit that are putting people into homes to live in?
You know what? We will have to look into see what exactly is the criteria on the nonprofit, but it would be something like, as long as that nonprofit is, like I said, they're not doing it for profit. They're doing it to help the community, help somebody get into the home. So it might be a different kind of criteria that you have to send in documentation about your nonprofit with your offer. So that I'm not sure. I've not had to represent a nonprofit with one of the HUD homes, but it's definitely a good question and we can look into that.
Okay. I also had another question.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the auctions, do you as a realtor, would you go to represent a buyer to the auction?
No, I have in the auction. Absolutely. I've done that too. And basically we will have that discussion, me and the buyer, on, okay, this is how much it's going for. And once we get into auction, especially if I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, you know what, this is a hot area. This area has really been selling, and this is the amount that it has been selling for, or the potential after it's fixed up. This is the comps, which you could put it back on the market and sell it for. Trust me, other investors have done the same thing. They've done their research. So if it's a real hot property, then I'm going to talk to my client and say, okay, this is what it's going for. How much do you want to bid up to? What is your breaking point? Like, nope, we're out. I'm not bidding anymore. Things of that nature. So that's going to be one of our conversations. And then I will tell them all the details as far as, okay, the bid is open from this time to this time. We have to have either our offering in, or some just have where you keep bidding and they can, where they have an automatic bid. You can set the amount that, okay, for every 5,000 and, I'll bid another 2,000 above this. and then not to exceed a certain amount. So it just really depends on how the auction is set up. But yes, I have represented the buyers in auctions, and I go in, read about it, make sure that we understand what the criteria is, the fees, how it's set up, when we can bid, how we can bid, things of that nature, and then have that conversation with the buyer.
What type
Absolutely.
would you set a flat fee or percentage of the house? What
Usually in that case, the seller has set what they're going to share with the buyer's agent. So it doesn't come out of the buyer's side.
Okay.
Even on auction, they do it the same way.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
So yes, the seller side is the one that sets the commission, and then they will share that commission with the buyer side agent.
Okay. So like you said, the seller pay your commission for the sale, and then let's say we flipped it, then we would pay you from you as you being the realtor, then we would pay
For the sale side. Right.
Okay.
So say for instance, you're my client and we are looking to buy a piece of property, right? So
Okay.
we go out and we find the house, we put the contract in, we get it. You, the buyer, is not paying me anything. What's happening is that the seller who's selling that home is sharing their commission with me.
Okay.
So now we've got the home, you fixed it up, everything like that. We're ready to put it back on the market, right? So at that point, me and you are going to sit down and talk about commission at that point. And we're going to do our paperwork, make sure everything's okay, make sure you understand everything that's happening. We're going to set that commission amount, right? And on the percentage. And so then I'm going to list that house and I'm going to say, you know, whatever agent out there brings a buyer and we have a good solid deal. And once it closes, I'm going to share a piece of my commission with that buyer's agent.
Okay. All right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll follow you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. No problem. Okay. Any other questions on that? Good stuff, guys. Good stuff. Just making sure I didn't miss anything. Okay. Any other questions on auctions? All right. All right. HomePath is another. HomePath.com is kind of similar to HUD, but they're another source that you can look for houses. So like I said, you've got a lot of information at your fingertips that you can look up online. And if you add in a realtor with that, that's even more of information that you have coming to you. But still a lot of information where you don't have to actually, you can kind of look for houses and stuff like that in your own time. But it still doesn't beat if you're riding through and you happen to notice something, or you go and you are part of some of these investor organizations and things like that, that they're talking about, hey, I've got this property, you know, I'm looking to get rid of, or I'm looking for, you know, somebody to go in with me on it, things of that nature. So all those things together is your pool of information and pool of resources that you can use. So don't be shy about it. You know, you will start, once you start working it and getting into there, you'll start looking for houses. And I kid you not, I have, you know, 2 or 3 clients that, man, as soon as something pops up, they looking every day. And they'll ask me about, Tiffany, what about this one? Tiffany, what about that one? Or whatever. So it can be, you know, if it's your passion, it can be fun and exciting. And you start really looking for those things that you want in your property. So anything that you do as far as your business and things like that, it becomes like a part of you, and you just looking for it every day, and you're trying to figure out different ways on how to do it. So again, this group is to try to help you focus in on what you want to do and give you that foundation and that pathway to set it up correctly, and try to avoid some of those pitfalls that does happen. You still will have issues and things that'll come up. Nothing is perfect, but at least it won't be as many if you're trying to figure it out and do it on your own. Okay. All right. Don't discount, like I said, social media. You can find some good stuff out on social media as well. And then wholesalers, there are wholesalers out there. And like we said, wholesalers, and we might have some on the line. Excuse me, if we do, feel free to join in and talk about your side as well. But I do know a few wholesalers, and they've been doing it for years and things like that or whatever. So they do go out, they will find the deal. And then they understand that with wholesaling, it has to be enough for everybody to win. And what I mean by that is that you've got somebody maybe that's in foreclosure, right? Or somebody this house has passed down and they live out of state, so they're just trying to get rid of the house. Well, they find the deal, they find the house. Okay, I'll buy it from you for $40,000, right? And it gets it out for you. You get a little bit of money, but I'm gonna sell it to this investor for maybe 55, 60,000. But guess what? Once that investor gets it and they fix it up, they might be able to flip it. And, you know, after they do everything, whatever, they might be able to make another 30 or 40,000 off of it. So again, win, win, win. Win for the person, get it off their plate and they get a little cash. You get a little cash because, hey, you getting that middle cut. And then the investor is going to be able to take that same property, flip it, or do whatever they want to do with it and make their cash off of it too. So that's kind of in a nutshell, very quick, down and dirty, what wholesaling is, right? So it is some work to do that. I know you might have heard people say, oh, it's easy. You don't have to use your own money and things like that. That's true to a certain extent. But understand that you still have to find those deals, be able to talk to that person, get them to trust you and do the deal. You still have to do paperwork on it, and then find the other half of that deal, right? So it is a little work on it. And you do have to put in the time and effort on it. But again, it's a way of finding a property. Talk to those wholesalers. Like I said, they looking for somebody to work a deal with. And they might be a really good source for you to find your property and your project as well.
Got a question for you about that.
Sure.
Or any question for anyone, because there may be wholesalers on here. Do you think that wholesaling should be regulated? It's a loaded question because I asked that for a reason.
Well, I swear, Will, I think you've been listening in on my conversations. Believe it or not, that is a conversation that is out there on the table right now. I think even with government looking into it, I haven't heard that they've done anything with this. I don't want anybody to get nervous or upset or anything like that. But that is a conversation that people are starting to think about. And I think what's happening is that, you know, you do have, unfortunately, when stuff like this starts happening is because somebody has done something and they've done it wrong, or the consumer has got the brunt end of the deal, something like that. And then people start watching and start looking like, you know what, this should be regulated because then that way we can control the problems and the issues, and you don't have the consumers that are getting the bad end of the stick. So with that being said, it is kind of a twofold. On one hand, wholesalers don't have to be realtors. You don't have to get a real estate license to do wholesaling or anything like that. And that's a good thing because, you know, you can just do your thing, find the deals, work them, make your money. And you don't have to be up under a broker for 2 years. You don't have to do commissions and all things like that. You can work your deal the way that you want to work it. Flip side of that, though, is that you do have some people that can do it incorrectly, whether they do it intentionally or by accident because they don't know, you know, and then that's when you start getting into some problems and legal problems at that. And then who's protecting the consumer? So it is a twofold. There's pros and cons to both sides. So I would not be surprised if you start hearing more and more about that information in this coming year. I really wouldn't.
Right. I've heard they've limited in other states.
Yes.
In some other
yes,
states.
I've heard that too. Yeah. So if it's happening in other states, 2-to-1, all the other states are going to at least look and see what's happening with it. Is it a good thing, bad thing, pros and cons? Do they want to adopt the same situation here? But yes, I have heard that it is in other states. One of those states being Georgia, which is real close to us. So I wouldn't be surprised if they look to see what's happening down there, and then some of the surrounding states that have that regulation already going on. So basically what that means is, if they do start regulating it, it may mean that in order to sell any kind of property, even if it's just paper, and when I say paper, that, okay, the wholesaler got the deal on paper, and then they're going to sell theirs to the next person. So they didn't physically take control of that house or that property. So it's going to be that, whether it's paper or you actually do a deal anything dealing with real estate, you will have to have a license unless it's your own personal property. And that's even now. You can sell your own personal property without being an agent. You can property manage your own personal property without having a license. But when you start doing it for other people, and that includes property management, you have to have a license.
Right. Okay.
And that is in the state of Kentucky already, is that if you property manage for somebody other than yourself and it's not your property, unless you got a company and you got somebody sitting there, helping manage. But if you are doing property management for somebody else other than your own property, you are supposed to have a license. Again, that's one of those things that a real estate agent can let you know too up front. So be careful with that. Again, your own personal property, you can sell it, you can property manage it all day. If you got 100 properties and they all yours, you can property manage those all day long. But as soon as I start managing for my brother, my cousin, my neighbor across the street, then that's a whole different story. And you have to have a license for that in the state of Kentucky.
Okay.
But good question. Good question. Yes, that is on the horizon. We will be hearing more about it. So I'd be interested. It'd be very interesting to see how that plays out. Me, I don't have a dog in that fight at all. I just hope whatever they do that is good for the end user.
Yeah, just the one thing that I would say that I think will make it fair and understandable is when in particular just dealing with ones that are doing the wholesale, holding a contract to so basically they're charging a fee to hold a contract, is that the owner, the current owner of the property should know that value. Just like if a real estate agent is getting the 6% or 4% of the cut, they should know what that value is, because most of them I think are good, but there's some that, I think I've kind of tried to work with, and I've done some research and looked at the property that they were trying to sell me for, didn't buy it, and then look at what it actually sold for. And I'm like, that's way over. But, even though it makes sense for an investor, a lot of that money should be going toward the actual owner of the property.
Yeah.
Because that's the catch that I'm like, that's you. Because unfortunately, sometimes when you deal with somebody's property, you may be dealing with some older folks.
Yes.
And you taking
And
advantage of them. Yeah. Telling them your property is worth only 30,000. Then you turn around and sell that to somebody else for 60,000, an investor, knowing that they can fix it up and get 150 out of it. And you basically you took advantage of somebody, which that's the part I don't like. So.
Yep. Exactly. And that's, like I said, where you do start having regulations come in and stuff like that, because you can do predatory preying. You know how they say predatory lending, and we got a whole bunch of rules and regulations around that now. So that is actually probably what's going to happen, because you do have some people that unfortunately are not on the up and up. and they're gonna do whatever they can to get somebody out of that house and make that dollar. Which is sad. But absolutely, we are definitely probably gonna hear a lot more about that in this upcoming year. So I do know that it is something that, because I went to the Kentucky legislative meeting back in February, and that was something that was looked like it was on the agenda to talk about. Now, I don't know if anything came out of it. Well, actually, nothing has came out of it because we haven't heard, but I do know that they are looking at it. So
Okay.
always good to
We'll
keep
see.
up to what's happening with legislation and regulations and ordinances and stuff like that politically. I know sometimes we get bombarded with all the other stuff politically, but you need to know what's going on in your own backyard, because that's what's going to hit you first. Especially if you're going into development, real estate, and things like that. So there's a lot of people that do definitely pay attention, because real estate is probably one of the biggest industries that definitely, as you guys saw in 2008, if it's not done right, it cripples the whole country. And that's kind of what happened in 2008. It was a lot of bad loans that were allowed to happen. And then when stuff started increasing, payments and everything started increasing because of the terms of these loans, people couldn't afford it. So houses start going into foreclosure. And that's what you don't want to have happen, is a lot of foreclosures. So then banks are stuck with not getting the money off the loan, but stuck with actual property, which they're not in the real estate business. And it just hurt the whole system. So there is a lot of regulations that has been put around real estate on lending and stuff like that to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Any other questions, guys? Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, well, let's keep moving. And if we look at the workbook on page 13, there's a lot of good questions that you can use just for yourself, just kind of as a checklist. And it's just different, as looking at different properties, and you can add your own questions to this list too. But this is a really, really good start on a list on what you want to look for in your property. It's asking, about zoning. What zoning is the property in? And I will say, anybody that's building or wanting to take a big house or a 4-unit and change it from one use to a different kind of use, definitely check the zoning first. Make sure you can do it before you even start before you even bid on it. Because if you can't do what you need to do with it, then that's going to change your whole plan. And what I mean by that, you see a lot of big houses, especially like in West End or Old Louisville, things like that. And they can be converted to, I've seen them be converted to a duplex, fourplex. I've seen them used as just room and board houses, where they have a common area, but then each room they rent out. Seen big houses used as halfway houses, used them as houses for teens, things like that or whatever. So if you're taking a regular residential home or any building, any property, and changing the use of it, make sure you check with zoning first to make sure that you can do it. Okay. Because if not, trust me, the city will come after you on that. The city would come after you if your grass is too high. Kid you not. And in certain parts of the city, if you got an alley, you got to make sure the numbers are on the back of the house or the garage so they can see your number. If you don't, guess what? They will get you for that too. Just little tips and tidbits.
Everything they can think of, they will find it. And they're honestly
yes, they will.
Targeting the West End right now. I'll just
be honest. You know what? And they've been doing that for a long time, which I think is kind of sad, because those are the houses that we have a lot more abandoned houses and people that are not able to keep up the property as in other neighborhoods. but yet you're ticketing and targeting us more. There is an appeals process, and before they actually give you the fine, there is, they give you time to fix it, correct it, and things like that. But again, if you don't have the funds and the resources, it can just start piling up. Absolutely. That is one thing, being property owners, whether you build new construction or you're doing commercial or you're doing residential, you are responsible for keeping that property up. And the city, like I said, whether you know or you don't know, they're gonna tag you.
Right, and they have a goal too. I read that on their budget, they have a targeted goal to get a certain amount of dollars, which I think is really wrong. But that's a whole nother story.
I can understand.
Find something. You can find something
with
nobody's
any
house
house
is perfect, and you can find
Right.
something.
Right. Totally agree. But yeah, when I first bought my first property, didn't know all of this, didn't know any of it. And at that time, I did not have a lawnmower and had not found anybody to cut my grass. So my grass got kind of high. Guess what? They came through and it was like, you got to cut this, which makes sense because of rodents and things like that. But it doesn't matter if you don't know or not, they're going to let you know. And then you do have to get it corrected. So you are responsible for your property. Couple of other great questions on here. What is the size of the lot? Which is important because if you're trying to do an 8-plex, but you only got room for a 4-plex, that might be an issue. Or you might have to change the layout because you still have to have so much for easement, which is, from the street to your property. You might have to allow so many spaces per unit for a parking lot. Believe me, that's a thing. So all those different things do play a part. So you do want to know the size of your lot and roughly what size lot do you need for the project that you're trying to do. And again, that goes along with the next question, what percentage of the lot can actually be developed? Especially if you kind of going into some areas that's got a preserve by it, or a park or something like that. You want to make sure that you're not going up against the park or using some land that you're not supposed to be using. So absolutely. Again, a lot of zoning questions. Then this is one I'm not sure of, but it is on here, and I think I'm gonna do some research on that myself. That's a good question. It says, what is the maximum allowed density? That's for multifamily mixed use developments. So I'm assuming that's, how many people can be in a certain location, certain area, but I'm gonna look that up because that is an interesting question. Maximum allowed density. And again, if you don't know something, that's fine. Just find out. Ask questions, do your research, and I'm pretty sure anything that you got a question on, you can Google it. I do all the time. What is the highest and best use? So again, that's that question. If you are building or reconstructing, things like that, your layout is very important. And I will say that for residential, for commercial, if you're building anything like that, because you want to get the maximum use out of your property. So take a look at your design. If you're reconfiguring a house that already exists, and you notice, you know what, if we just move this wall over, we can maximize this little space that's not even being used. So when you go through looking at your properties and looking at houses and looking at your design, make sure that, you know what, you're using that space the best possible way that you can. Sometimes you might have a little space that you can't use, but it could be because, the huge water pipeline is going through it and it will cost too much money. It doesn't make sense to move all of it. But just make sure that you're looking at your design to make sure that you're using all your property in the best possible way that you can, maximum use, even the land around it. Are you using it the best efficient way that you can? And it's not a bad idea to have more than one eyes on your project, just to take a look at it to make sure that you're maximizing the space, because it does matter. Example of that. Sure. Yes, go
I'm
ahead.
so sorry. I thought you were done. I
No,
was
no,
going to
go
ask
ahead.
a question about the zoning. Have you ever seen where there's a different zoning to like the north, south, and east or the west of the property? Have you ever seen that before?
I have not. I'm trying to think of a situation where that would come into play.
So would that affect us if we bought something that's residential and maybe to the north of it, to the north behind it, for example, is commercial? Would that impact what we're doing with it?
It probably won't impact your property, but if you think of it in terms of if I'm in residential zoning, right, and the piece of property I bought is residential, but right in the back of me is commercial manufacturing, and they get to build a big manufacturing plant right there. How likely is it? How hard is it going to be for you to sell that home?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Okay. So those bullet points make sense now. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's what they mean by, if you can, try to look at the zoning around it, especially if you right on the cusp of, and I'll say, for instance, like one area that I'm thinking of right off the top of my head is like over by 7th Street.
Okay.
You know, you got kind of the big buildings like the storage houses and stuff like that. You got a mobile home park, you got a flea market, then right across the street, you got, apartments and stuff. And then down the street, you got houses. So I'm pretty sure you got a lot of mixed zoning right in that area. Not to say it's bad or good, but you do have to think about that when you're thinking of, and I would say resale value. Or how hard it is to get the type of client that you need into your project. Whether it's a commercial building that you're gonna do for business, or is it you trying to put a multiple unit, family unit, or you just want to put a house. So looking at those different zones that is around the area definitely makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on that, guys? Will?
Yeah. So I'm just out of curiosity. Do you know of anybody that went from a single family residential to a 2-family residential zoning? Is it an easy process, or is it just
Like a duplex?
Yeah, basically.
Duplexes, I don't think they really have too much zoning. I've never seen where they had to rezone for a duplex. More so probably anything over a 4-plex. You might want to check, because then it's, you gotta make sure that you got enough parking spaces. And I forgot how many parking spaces it is to so many units. But let's double check on that and make a note for myself on zoning. So because we got plenty of duplexes, houses that was changed over to duplexes and things like that. It's always good to make sure you check it though. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, and anybody on here that knows different, correct me, please. But I think it's over a 4-plex.
Okay. Yeah, well, the reason I asked that, because the zoning map, if you look at it on Logic, it has all the different colors, and I'm like, well, how did they determine that you can have a single versus a 2? And could you go from a single to 2-family residential without a problem, or you got to fight everything? So
okay. Good question. Absolutely. And the website that Will did add in there, that is zoning, and there is actually a zoning board. And that information you can find on our wonderful city website, which is Louisville KY. Is it .org? I think so.
Gov.
Oh, Gov. Thank you. .gov. I'll get the org and the gov mixed up, but yes, .gov. And they do have pretty much almost all your boards departments and regulation departments and everything like that on that website. You might have to search a little bit, but it's on there. So again, it's a great resource to get that information. Thank you, Ms. Carletta, put that in our chat. So LouisvilleKY.gov. And you definitely can see if there's any rules and regulations, just basic information on zoning. But the information to contact the zoning board is on there as well. But that's a good question. I will ask about that duplexes, and I'll get us an answer on that. Cool. I know sometimes we don't think about this, but it is important when you are looking at, I don't care, residential, multifamily, business, commercial, what is around it? Not so much just the zoning, but if you are putting a building and developing a building for beauty shops, is there certain things that you need around that beauty shop to make it successful? Do you need a high traffic area, or is it okay being kind of off in the cut? Do you need it to be, on the bus line, or by restaurants, things of that nature or whatever? So you do kind of, and all you have to do is think about, okay, if I was going to this business, how would I get there? What do I need it to be around there? And what would make me go to that business? A lot of times, like me, for instance, I don't like driving real far out. So I probably tend to stay in my own little area and go to my own little grocery stores and stuff like that, unless I just got to go to the mall. But and it could be other people that, for this business, it is fine being off on a side street. And it doesn't need to have a bus stop. It doesn't need to be by restaurants and things of that nature. So depending on what your project is, and who you're developing it for, what needs to be around that development to make it successful, right? One of the things is when we talk about even in residential is a walkable area, urban area, things like that. You see the trend kind of going back to is that if we do a mixed use building where you can live in it, but it's got a restaurant downstairs or a marketplace right next to it or down the street, a pharmacy, things like that, within walking distance gets everything that I need. So if that's kind of your thought process on what you want to build, make sure that when you're thinking about your project and location, that it has what you're looking for. Any questions on that? Okay. And other things on here, we kind of talked about the easement, development, what to look for. If you do buy a big lot, can you subdivide it? Most lots you can, I do believe, but I'm not sure of the process. So just really depending on what you want to do. And what I mean by subdividing is, say if you buy a big, 5 acres of land and you only want to use maybe 2 acres of the land, can you divide that off and sell it? Or is there something written in the deed where no, you can never divide it? Because sometimes that happens too. There are deed restrictions on some of the things that you do buy. And again, that might be where you might want a realtor to help you with it, or an attorney. And just make sure that you're reading all the fine print as well. Again, it doesn't happen too often, but just something to think about. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds where you're like, oh my goodness, I don't ever want to do this. This is too much. Most of the time, as you're working through your project, most of it is kind of self-explanatory. Most of it is, okay, let me just think about this a little bit, what I would want to see in this project and in my property. But you will get through it. It's not that bad. And once you get your first project under your belt, man, you'll be ready to rock and roll. Okay. Anybody want to do something ground up? I think we did have somebody at the very beginning that was interested in doing ground up. I think they wanted to do an 8-plex. Can anybody want to do a ground up?
Yep.
Yes,
One
ma'am.
of the things.
Cool. Anybody want to share? Not that I want to, give away anybody's ideas or anything like that or whatever. But this is a great little section, again, in the workbook, just to get your mind around some of the checklists, and a great starter checklist, things that you need to look for and look at when you want to do ground up. Which is a little bit different than structures that are already there. Most of the handiwork is already done. Ground up, again, is a little bit different. We talked about previously about, environmental phase 1 assessment. It might be required to get that done, or you just might want to get it done for your own personal information. Make sure that the ground is safe, nothing's wrong with the soil that you're building on, things of that nature. I will say, one thing that Kentucky does have, and we are kind of high on the list with, is radon. And radon is an odorless gas. And usually it's underground. And when you start moving the earth and things like that, those gases do come up. So it is good. A lot of people with basements, when I do sell houses and things like that, or my buyers buy houses or whatever, sometimes they do want to get a radon test done, especially if you do have a basement, just to check the levels, make sure that they're safe, especially in like newer construction homes that have basements. They do like to get radon tests done. So it's just one thing that I do know. It's not anything that you got to get a environmental phase 1 test done on it, but any pretty much home inspector can set up a radon test. And it's good to have. It's just something to throw out there for you guys. If you ever hear when you're doing a project that somebody wants to get a radon test done, you don't have to go nuts or crazy. It's kind of common practice or whatever for those radon tests to get done. And it's becoming more and more popular as we sell houses and things like that and do developments. So, and I say that just because that's one of those environmental things that do pop up, but I can't say that radon is one for Kentucky that we do see testing quite often. Again, depending on what kind of facility that you want to build, is it for medical? Are you going to have hazardous waste? If so, how are you going to dispose of it? Things of that nature. What do you need on your property? Are there any wells on the land? That's interesting. And just to share with you a little bit, that not so much as just wells, but anything that's on the property that's a little bit different than you might normally see. I know like in Shively, it was on the septic, as far as the septic system or whatever, they had a lot of septic tanks that were underground. And then everybody kind of went to public sewer system. And there's still quite a few properties that the septic tanks are not being used, but they're still underground. So that information has to be shared with the buyer as well. I had a good friend that actually had a septic tank in their backyard, didn't know it for years. But again, as time went on, that septic tank started eroding underground. And so had a hole in their yard, and come to find out that it was an old septic tank down there. So basically what he had to have a company come in and they filled it with big rocks first. Then they filled it with sand and then dirt on top of it. And then they let it set for so many months, and then they come back out and check it. So that being said, you could have a well if it's in the city, certain parts of the city, or outskirts of the city or whatever, you could have a septic tank. So that is possible. So you start finding out all these different things that happen in real estate that you're like, what? But it is actually stuff that's there, and it's stuff that's in the city too. So when you see stuff like, oh, a well, nobody has a well, but it could be an old well. It could be a stream that used to come through the property or whatever. So just really depends on what part of the city. And again, just knowing what area that you want to be in and try to do as much research on that area as you can. Again, not gonna inundate everybody with all the stuff, but construction ground up does have a few more steps than if you had a regular structure. For those people that are building ground up, any questions? And like I said, we're gonna have somebody on Wednesday that's gonna kind of talk us through construction loans, what to look for and what we need to do. Any questions on that?
Not a question, but a comment.
Okay. Sure.
Radon, because I had a friend of mine that actually went through that issue when they bought a property. But like for new constructions, there are some people now, which I would definitely say do it, is that you can put in the system under your slab prior to construction, which is easier and is more cost effective to just put it in regardless if you have it or not prior to construction under your concrete slab. So that may be something to look at if anybody's doing new construction.
Absolutely. And say if you go to some of these bigger developers and stuff like that, they will have in the contract that you can get a radon test, and they will take care of the cost if it's done within a certain time frame. So again, make sure you pay attention to your contracts and things like that or whatever. But that is a good idea. So if they're going to go ahead and build it, before they lay that foundation, go ahead and put that radon system in. Like you said, whether you have it or not, that's just going to save you a lot of time and energy later on. So absolutely. And I can say that most radon tests is about $150, roughly. Don't quote me on that. And then the mitigation, say, the levels are high and you do need a radon mitigation system put in. I think the last price that my client did, it was about $800. So not a huge expense, but still an expense. Right. All right. Any other questions or comments that we have on that? Okay. Let's move right along, guys, because it is 6:28, so we got about 30 more minutes. And one of the things I do want to cover and talk about is when you do find that property and it's meeting your criteria and things like that, whether you use an agent or you feel great about doing your own contract, make sure that contract is what you want it to be, because once you sign the dotted line, even though it might take 30 days, 45 days, 3 months, 6 months to close, when you sign that contract, that is a legal and binding document. Technically, you have bought that property. Now, there might be stipulations in the contract where if this doesn't happen or that doesn't happen, then you can get out of it. But I'm telling you, whether it's a residential, you buying it for your own personal, or business-wise, you buying a piece of property or whatever, once you sign that contract, it is a legal and binding document. So make sure that you are comfortable with the information, understand that contract and what all it means before you sign it and send it back in. I have had clients that, was like, hey, I want to get out of this. And it just really depends on the reason why you want to get out of it. Most reasons, if it's because, we did the inspection and there's just too much work and we are in the inspection period that was set in the contract, then yes, we can get out of it with no problem. But if it's past that inspection period and you just wake up and it's like, I changed my mind. Most of the time you can get out of that. Most sellers will not fight you on that, but they will keep your deposit. They will keep your good faith deposit because you just took their property off the market and now they got to put it back on the market. But legally, if they did not want to do that, they could take you to court and say, no, if everything is good, all the steps have been taken, your lender, you are able to sustain this deal and there's no problem with the lender or whatever, they can take you to court and make you buy that property because you signed a legal and binding document. Vice versa. If you're the seller and you're just like, you know what, I changed my mind. I don't want to sell my house. Guess what? If everything's going good and all parties are executing that contract legally and to the best of the contract, then they can take the seller to court and say, no, I want that property. It's mine. So again, before you sign your name, it is a legal and binding document. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Carletta. Ms. Carletta has her hand up.
Hey, so Tiffany, so say we're new, because we're new at this, us coming in not knowing anything, being so green. So like if we found a building or something, will we have like a real estate person to help us with that? Or how does that work?
I definitely would say, especially on your first one, I would recommend, not because I'm a realtor, but I would recommend getting help and getting a realtor. Absolutely. I would recommend that because of that contract. And of course, somebody who's selling it, who may have experience in real estate and selling and things like that, they're going to know what that contract means and what every part means. Whereas if you're new and you coming into it and you don't quite fully understand all of it and you don't have somebody representing you, you could be missing out on some options and things like that, or it might not be to the best for you. So I would say, just as your first project, dealing with contracts and stuff like that, I would say, yes, please hook up with a real estate agent to help you.
Okay, so will we take the agent with us, or we would like negotiate and tell them we gonna have someone look at it? How do you present that to them?
Sure, absolutely. Let a real estate agent work for their money.
Okay. Okay.
I'm just gonna be real. That's what they're getting paid for, is to work for their money or whatever. And that's what they're there for, though, is to talk to you, see what it is that you're looking for and what you want, help you look for that property. And then once that property is located, help you negotiate that contract. Now, we can't tell you what to bid. We can say, hey, this is what the market is doing. I would suggest this. This is what's going on. This is a fair deal, things like that or whatever. But the actual terms and everything is still up to the buyer, what they want to offer. And what we're going to do is make sure that it's in the contract the way you want it, understand and explain every part of that contract to you. And then we're going to make sure that everything in that contract is done. So all timelines, all inspections, everything is done. And that is our responsibility to keep up with those timelines as well, to make sure that, hey, my client doesn't miss out on anything. So yes, that is that's what we do, is to help you with that contract. Then we get it over to, if they have a seller or the seller's agent, we get it over to that person and we say, hey, we would like a response back in such and such time, right? And they could come back to us, and this is all a part of the negotiation. They can come back to us and say, hey, we don't like your contract at all. We're not even gonna look at it. That's their decision. Or they can come back and say, well, we like most of it, but we want to change these few things, which is called a counter. They're going to do a counter offer back to us. Or they can say, yep, love the offer. We accept. Once they accept, that is a done deal. Nobody can come in on your deal. That deal is what we call now pending. And then we just do the steps according to the contract to get us to the closing table, right? Like I said, if they come back and they counter and say, okay, well, we want to just change these things, whether it's the price or, hey, we need longer time to close or whatever the case may be, they're going to send that back to us, right? And then we take a look at it and say, yes, I agree with everything. That's doable. I don't have a problem with it. Or, nah, I'm okay with everything, except we need to tweak this a little bit. Guess what? We're going to send the counter back over. Or we're going to say, you know what? I don't want the deal at all. They asking too much. I don't feel like it's worth it. My numbers are not coming out right. I can't make that project work or whatever. We're going to kill it all together. So again, it's that negotiation back and forth, and that realtor is there to help those negotiations and talk with you about it. But a realtor should not be doing anything that they have not discussed with their client, whether that's on the buyer side or the seller side, because we are here to make sure in your best interest that we're doing what you want us to do, based on our expertise and our information that we're sharing with you and giving to you and our knowledge of contracts and things of that nature. So absolutely be there to work for you and let them take care of it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on that, guys? So we find the property, we put our contract in, we got it accepted. Our next step is, and you can do this probably even before you put a contract in. And you see on our little workbook, it's our net sheet. And a realtor will go over this too with you at the beginning, especially if you're a seller and you're selling the property, or even if you're buying. And it's basically kind of telling you how much it's going to cost to really do this deal, right? Because you got the sales price. The sales price is the sales price, whatever you guys negotiate, what that sales price is. So we know that's the price. The other part of that is all the other fees that come along with it that you got to make sure that you're ready for. And that is where if you're financing, your loan officer, your real estate agent, and you sit down and do these numbers, right? So you're going to have closing costs. Closing costs is not a part of the loan. It is exactly what it is, how much it costs to get that loan closed. So that's recording fees, that's appraisals, that's title searches, that's how much the city charges to get the documents done. That's how much your loan officer or that lender charges to finance that deal. So it has nothing to do with sale price, has nothing to do with loan. That is how much it costs to get the deal done and all the paperwork and the people that's working to get that deal done. Those are your closing costs. Then you do have your down payment, right? So if you're financing, down payment is what, again, you are investing into your own property. So most loans, like I said, just depends on what lender that you use. Most people are going to be doing some kind of investment loan or construction loan. You will take a look at whatever product your loan officer is telling you about that's fitting what you want to have happen. They're going to tell you what the terms are. It's going to be at this interest rate. And this is the amount that we're willing to finance you for. And this is the amount of your down payment. That down payment could be 3.5% of the sale price. It could be, in most investment properties, is 20 to 25%, right? So that's the amount that you have to come to the table with. They're not going to fund, and you do have some programs. Again, it depends on the lender and what kind of product that they have. And when I say product, I mean what kind of loan that may do 100% financing, but I would get it in my head that you're going to have to come to the table with 20 to 25%. And that is 20 to 25% of the loan amount. That does not include closing costs. That's just your portion of what you're putting down to invest in your property, right? So you're going to calculate in whatever that product is, whatever that loan is, the loan officer is telling you your down payment amount. So you're going to come to the table with down payment amount and closing cost amount. That loan officer can also tell you roughly how much your closing cost amount is going to be as well. And then the other thing that, during the course of the deal, you might, like I say, get inspections. Inspections is always on you. That's not a part of the loan. That's not a part of the closing costs. Those are the things that you want to have happen. And I would say get inspections done on if you're buying an already standing structure, you definitely want to get an inspection, or have your crew, your contractor that you trust, to come in and look at that property with you and say, okay, well, you know what, look at this. This is what's going on. We're going to have to redo this. We're going to have to, and this going to cost this or whatever. That's going to give you how much your repairs are. So make sure that you understand that. But again, when you go to do that deal, you're going to have down payment and closing costs, right? And that has to be paid at the time of closing. That's not, hey, I'll pay you later. That's the amount that you need to have when you go to the table, sign all your documents. And before you get keys, they're going to say, hey, I need bottom line. They'll add up everything on each side. And after all the credits, debits, everything like that, they'll tell you, and you'll know ahead of time because your loan officer is going to tell you ahead of time how much money you need. And that's the amount of money that you need to come to the closing with, right? Again, your loan officer and your real estate agent should be sitting down with you ahead of time and kind of roughly doing those numbers with you. That way there's no surprises and you don't get to the end at the table and say, man, I don't have enough. Again, on the selling side, if you're selling, same thing should happen. You know, we're selling it for this amount. If I have a loan on it, the loan is going to come off first because the title company is going to make sure any kind of liens and loans that is on that property, those get paid first before you ever get any piece of that money. All that is cleared up first because they have to give that buyer a clear title, right? So they got to make sure that that title, anything that they know about, and that even is, they would check even your personal to see if there's any kind of real estate liens from your personal that you haven't paid. Because say, for instance, you bought a car, you didn't pay for it or whatever, they put a lien on any of your future real estate purchases. Guess what? When they go run you and they see that there's a lien against your real estate, they're going to pay that out first because they have to produce that clear title in order for the buyer. So that's going to come out of that sale price so if you're selling it for $120,000 and you got a loan for $60,000, they're going to take that $60,000 first. Hopefully you don't have any other liens or loans. They're going to take the commission for the agent out. They're going to take that piece out. Any like little fees and stuff like that to get it recorded. All that's going to come out of your side. And then at the very bottom, they're going to have how much, which is your net profit, how much is coming to you, and you will get a check that day for it. So again, that is information that if you do have a real estate agent, they should be going over that information with you as well before you get to the table. Actually, probably that will be a conversation that you do when you're getting it ready to put on the market if you're going to sell your property, right? So it should be doing a net sheet. And you can do it on your own as well. 2-to-1 if you've ever bought your own property, your own personal house, you kind of have an idea of how that process works. And if not, after you do your first project, you'll definitely have an idea of how that works. And then you'll be able to do your own net sheet. And after working with a loan officer for so long, you'll kind of know what the fees and everything like that goes with it, and you'll be able to calculate. So again, that is just the loan. That's not all the repairs and everything that you got to do, but you do need to make sure that you do calculate the closing cost and that down payment. Okay. Any questions on that? Any questions?
Tiffany, I have one question, and it kind of goes back to a statement you made in referencing the realtors and their responsibility. So if the realtor's responsibility is not to, I guess, like make a deal outside of what the seller or sellers has agreed upon, what recourse do the sellers have if, say, for example, let's say you have 100 acres and you're trying to sell that property, but the real estate agent that you contracted worked with a unscrupulous, if you will, real estate agent or investor's agent. And so rather than the property, say, being worth $5 million, it is they try to sell it they try to talk you into selling it, or they write the contract for 1 million. What kind of recourse? Yes. What kind of recourse do the sellers of that acreage have?
Right. Oh, that's a good question.
Especially when it comes to if you're thinking of if the people that own the land are elderly.
Right. Absolutely. One of the things, yeah, that's ugly. If they got if both the realtors are not playing fairly, and so you do get wind of that, then you actually can call the Kentucky Commissioner's Office and file a complaint. And what happens is that you open that, once they start that investigation, they actually contact the broker. If that person is not a broker, they will contact that person's broker on both sides, if both sides are involved. And then they have to give account for everything that they've done. And the broker gets involved, the commission gets involved, and they start pulling records and information. And if it is found out that they did do something that was incorrect, not so much as incorrect, but unscrupulous, and they knew about it and they did it on purpose, then that person can be fined. That person can get their license stripped away from them. Depending on the severity of it, they could get charges brought up against them. So it just really depends on what that investigation finds out. But yes, that is how we are held accountable, that you can open up that investigation and that complaint with the Kentucky Commissioner's Office, Real Estate Commission's Office.
Okay, and then the last thing is, so does each state have that? Because like, I think some of the property that the senior citizen has is also in another state, but the realtor they were using here was working with a realtor out of state.
Gotcha. They should have a commission that they have to report to. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. So that is important. We do get held to a standard as well. And like I said, if you think something is happening, absolutely, absolutely make sure that you do report it. It kind of goes through me. Because, you know, people have put their trust in us to help them through some of the biggest investments of their lives. And I think that we should hold that in high regard. But of course, you got all types that are out there. So that is one way of holding them accountable. And then again, you can always take them to court too, and sue them. There's always the court system. And we do have to have insurance in case of those type of things or whatever, just like an attorney, you know, a doctor or something like that. But you can always use the court system if going through those channels don't work.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Great session, guys. Any other questions? Well, we're at the end of our show today. And if you guys don't have any other questions, we will absolutely be getting off of here. Review your information, be working on your project, thinking about it. If you need anything, please let us know. And we will definitely, I've got a couple of questions that I'll have to follow back up on. So I'll make sure I try to have that for our next session on Wednesday. If you think of anything in the meantime, got questions, you go through your workbook and it's like, man, I meant to ask that. Please feel free to come back and we'll go over it and get those answers for you. Again, this is just a resource trying to get everybody up and running and make sure that this is going to be beneficial to everyone. So I appreciate each and every one of you. And if we don't have anything else, I can let you go. Will, you got anything?
Thank you.
Will was quiet because he was feeding his face.
Amen. That's what I'm about to go through. All right, guys, you have a wonderful evening and we will see everybody back. Same bat channel, same bat time on Wednesday. Thank you and have a great night.
See you.